parents, if you're seeing this, that means your child was either lucky enough or unfortunate enough to really have me as their science teacher. I'm Mrs. Skibbe, and I have been teaching science at Monroe for a really long time. I think this is my 19th year. And I also teach foundations, and I actually teach an 8th grade digital authorship class this year. I'm EL endorsed, and I have taught math here at Monroe, and I've taught language arts, so I've been around a little bit. But welcome to 6th grade science. We're going to start out by talking about, well, there's a little bit more information about me, and we're going to talk about one thing that parents really get nervous about, or really it's like one of their first times for their child to be working with grades, because I think in the elementaries they don't have grades. And so it's always important for parents to keep up with grades and work, and for their students to keep up. All of the lessons that we've been posting, especially during remote lessons in Google Classroom. And then I also have a slideshow that is available to students in Google Classroom, which really talks about sort of the agenda for the day and what they should be paying attention to, and also the asynchronous work. And I create a new slideshow for each unit. So and there'll be additional resources in each of those slideshows if there are things that we're working on in class that might extend a learning beyond the book. Grades are updated about once every 2 weeks. I try to update more frequently than that, but it is required. It's about once every 2 weeks. And often students will have work that is late. And I really sort of been very firm about the amount of late work with the remote learning, because the time that we're giving for them to do it is really time from class. And so, and then going back to check all the late work is very time consuming. And so with well over 100 students, it's very difficult. So I've really sort of been very strict about the late work, but we do update grades every 2 weeks. And I do take work that is late if it's not beyond an unreasonable amount of time, but I'm not really letting kids know about how generous I'm being about that. I'm really encouraging them to turn it in on time, so that when they are in class, they can be with us for the grading portion, so they're not missing any information. You're welcome to check student view and parent view, and I recommend that if that's something that you like to do, that you do that with your students, so that they know that you're aware of what's going on in their classroom. And if there is any discrepancies or issues, I encourage you to have your child reach out so that they can take ownership of that and be responsible for finding out what's going on with their grade. There's a lot of digital work, and it's very difficult to go back and check for late work. So if they are emailing about that, they should always put the date and the assignment that they're referring to as well, whether that be synchronous or asynchronous. A lot of the digital tools that we've been using this year, we do a lot of YouTube videos, and sometimes those will be along with what's called an ed puzzle, which might be where the video stops and asks them a question before they're allowed to move on. We use this process right now, which is called Screencastify, where you might see a teacher in the bottom corner, and there might be some other material being presented. Quizlet and quizzes are great for practice and for review. We're using Google Slides to stay organized. So if your child is absent and they're not sure what happened, they can either check Google Classroom, obviously, or they can go and look at the slides for a more detailed layout of things we went over in class, as well as links. A lot of work is being turned in if we're in a remote fashion through Google Forms. So they might have a link in Google Classroom that will take them to an assignment in a Google form, where they might have to read something and answer questions, or do a video and answer questions, and it gets turned in that way. Actively Learn articles, we haven't started quite yet this year, but we'll be using that. Padlet is another type of an application where students can post some of their products from class. Kahoot is another review thing we use, and then Google Docs, where they might actually have to type an assignment into the Google Doc that's pre-formatted and turn it in that way. In terms of the content, this arrangement of slides is different than it would have been in previous years, because we've had to do some changing of the order of the units based on the remote or hybrid model. There are 2 astronomy units. We've already completed the Sun, Earth, and Moon unit on rotation, revolution, seasons, tides, moon phases, things like that. And they've taken their first test, and it was open book, open note. And our second astronomy unit will be about planets, stars. The sun will be a part of that, obviously, birth and death of stars, constellations, galaxies, the universe. But we've sort of interrupted that, because now that we're back in person, we're trying to do the very hands-on, the heavy hands-on unit, while we have access to them. And so we're actually working currently on our measurement unit. Today we did begin in class, and your child will hopefully be able to talk about using these different materials. So measuring with rulers and meter sticks and using metric measurement for length, mass using the triple beam balance, volume using beakers and graduated cylinders, calculating density, which kind of it's always very overwhelming for students, but it's something they'll revisit in 7th and 8th grade, and then time and temperature. That unit also goes along with our scientific method or scientific inquiry process, which we will spend some time identifying each piece of those in a lab and identifying the parts of the scientific method. And then, of course, we'll work on graphing some of our data, which is something that we see on a lot of standardized testing. Normally, I would say in January, we're starting our weather unit, but we're not exactly sure of the pacing right now. But we do think that we know we'll get to our weather unit. We're not sure when, but it's a unit that's high interest for kids. And it's great because they all have a lot of background knowledge and their experience with weather. But we will start, there are 2 weather units as well. The first one really focuses on the stuff you see on the left there with air properties, pressure, mass, density, layers of the atmosphere and such. And then we start to talk about actual weather in our second unit, like local and global wind patterns and water in the air and things like precipitation and clouds and rain and the water cycle. We talk about air masses and fronts, global currents, and then we end on storms, which the students really enjoy. And we tend to spend the greater portion of the back half of the year on our water unit, and we're not exactly sure which pieces we will be able to get through, but we talk about rivers and streams. We talk about erosion, deposition, the freshwater cycle, groundwater, and that's always great because we talk about our local water sources and how they link into larger bodies of water and rivers that all leads to the Gulf of Mexico and the ocean. So the kids really enjoy it. Whether we are in a remote or a hybrid classroom setting, the expectations are essentially similar. We do need students to be on time, and that's not a problem when we're in hybrid. When we're in the remote setting, it is important, given that we have 25 minutes, that students are logging on at the correct time and that they do have their materials. And an important thing when they come to school is to have that Chromebook charged and ready to go. If they do happen to be absent, again, those Google Slides will give them an agenda of things we went over with links. They can check Google Classroom and the homework page, and if they when they return or if we're not in person, if they email, they can get any missed work. Again, more of those learning expectations for teachers. It's about building relationships, especially at this time with kids, providing a safe environment and teaching them the Common Core standards and skills with enthusiasm and giving that timely feedback. And then we are expecting students to have their materials and to come to class on time, to be respectful and then hand in their work on time and consistently and being of high quality. Their grade in science is based on whether or not they're ready for class, and they don't necessarily get points for having their materials, but that will come into the grades about whether they're being prepared if they have their work, their homework completed and on time, and class participation can also play into that. But completing those assignments and activities thoroughly and on time will be the significant portion. I'm sure from a lot of teachers you're hearing about helping at home, and at this time, of course, it's a very different setting than it would be maybe during any other year, but having a quiet place or a place that they can kind of create for themselves to work. And we ask that it not be in their bed. I know that when I'm at home and I take work in a bed, it's not long before I'm dozing off, but even if it's in their room, if they have a space on the floor, even separated from their bed so that they're not tempted to slouch or lay down, making sure that your child has any materials they might need, and then reminding them to check on Google Classroom at the appropriate time and checking Student View for any missing work. And then if they aren't sure what they're missing, or when they're looking at their homework sheet, if they're not in class, they can see what they're missing. And then just talking to them about what it is that they're doing at school. I know a lot of students have probably been talking about their moon phases. Here are important links for any class. The Monroe website, which you will also find links on there for other important information, is the calendar, and you can find the homework page link through it. Student View and Parent View, which again, I encourage that if you're using that to do that along with your child. The homework page is a good place if your child is absent to look, or if they maybe have forgotten to fill out their assignment notebook. And then Google Classroom is where they can find any information or posts or assignments posted. they might not find grades there. I think they're not 100% sure on that yet. Please feel free to reach out if you need to ask me any questions or have any follow-up questions or any issues that are occurring at donna.skibbe@cusd200.org. I know conferences are coming up, and I know that conference registration is open. If your child is doing well and you have no concerns, please don't feel the need to make an appointment. I know sixth grade is such a transition year that it's always good to make a connection with your child's teacher, and I'm happy to do that. We can set that up for another time as well if that's something you prefer. But if you do feel like you want to make an appointment for a conference, please feel free to do so. But if you're feeling like there's a lot going on and you really feel like your child's being successful, please don't feel obligated to do so. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and I look forward to supporting your child in science this year. Bye.